911. What's your emergency?
At 3 in the morning, a child calls the fire department. There's no fire, but her
Ring
room
around
is
the
filled with
rosy.
smoke. And from the basement come voices that don't belong to anyone alive. Weeks later, a teacher begs for help from inside a forest. The trees are moving and the children are disappearing. And in a typical neighborhood home, neighbors claim the walls breathe. Literally. 3 real calls, recorded, with recordings that no one can explain. What lies behind these cases? Possession, forgotten rituals, or something even older and hungrier? Why do all these manifestations always seem to arise at night? What happened to the children who slept in a circle in the forest? And why does the boy's last sentence still echo on the emergency tapes? He's in the fire, he's in the dark. Before we understand what's going on, we need to hear what these voices said. It was around 3 in the morning. The center was completely silent, only the sound of light rain beating against the windows. I'd already answered a few calls that night. Nothing out of the ordinary. Short circuit, cat stuck on the roof, the usual. But then the phone rang again, and my life changed forever. It was a connection that, to this day, I can't forget. Not even by trying. Not even by drinking. Not even by praying. I answered as usual. Fire department. What's the emergency? And on the other end came the faintest, most frightened voice I'd ever heard. A child. There's smoke coming out of my bedroom floor. My spine froze. I asked his name, age, and where his parents were. He said his name was Mateus, 9 years old, and that he was with his 4-year-old sister. His parents had gone out, leaving them alone. It was the kind of irresponsibility we've become accustomed to seeing. But then he said, I think the basement is on fire, but there is no fire. There are voices. I was silent for a second. Voices. I asked if he could see smoke, flames, or any strange light. He said the smoke was coming out of the cracks in the floor and that it looked dark, thick, alive. He said it smelled like old candles and burnt flesh. And then he completed, the stairs are gone. Now it's just darkness. And someone is calling me from downstairs. That's when I heard it. On the line. Very low. As if it were far away, but too close. Whispers. Sounds that didn't sound like any language I knew. And I've heard people speaking in panic in Arabic, Russian, even indigenous languages. That wasn't a language. It was something primitive, raw. I asked him to leave the room, grab his sister, and go to the window. But he said he couldn't move anymore. He said the floor felt heavier, like it was pulling him down. And then, out of nowhere, I heard another voice, higher pitched. It was the little sister, only she didn't cry. She sang, a childish, distorted melody, something like a lullaby in reverse. Her voice was wrong. Tonight is the night of fire. Mommy said. I asked her name. She said it was Sophia. I tried to talk to her, but she just kept saying, the Lord of Ashes is coming today. The lines started to crackle, and every time I spoke, it sounded like another voice, repeating my words, with a delay, like an echo from the bottom of a well. I had already sent the car, but I felt like it might be too late. I asked Mateus to hold his sister. I told him the fire department was coming, and he replied, they've already arrived, but it's not you. The last thing I heard was a creaking sound. Then the line went dead. The crews arrived quickly. The house looked normal from the outside, but inside, it was a tomb of soot. All the walls were black, as if the fire had licked every inch. But there was no structural damage, no active fires, no embers, not even smoke. They found the 2 of them in the basement, sitting down. The girl's eyes were white, completely glazed, and the boy was holding a cordless phone, which had no battery, no base connected, nothing. But the connection had been recorded, and in it, you can hear it. The voices, the chants, and the sound of something, crawling. Forensics discovered symbols burned into the basement floor, symbols that shouldn't have been there. Neighbors reported that the parents were involved in a strange group, cults, nighttime meetings, animal sacrifices. I never saw those 2 again. They were taken away, hospitalized, I think. The girl stopped talking. The boy just repeats one phrase. He's in the fire. He's in the dark. Ever since that day, I've hated the early morning shift, because sometimes the phone rings at exactly 3, and sometimes someone on the other end already knows my name. Most of the calls we receive are predictable: brush fires, fires near a farm, an accident at a campsite. But there was one night that went beyond any standard. It was late October. Around 10 p.m., I received a call from a school camp in a secluded area of the mountains. A female voice, nervous, almost breathless. "Please, the forest. It has closed. It is moving." In the background of the call, I could hear children crying, and something else. A sound, like leaves rustling, but not in the wind, like they were being pulled. The woman identified herself as a teacher. They were with 12 children at an overnight activity. Supervised camping. Everything was normal, until the trees started moving. I asked her to remain calm and count how many children were with her. The answer chilled my blood. There were 12. Now there are 9. She was cornered with the group near a clearing. She said the path they'd come from had disappeared, literally. The trails were covered in thick fog, and the phone's GPS was spinning in circles. A boy said the sky had shifted, that the stars were wrong. Another said he saw eyes among the trees, but they were too tall to be human. One of the girls said that the floor whispered names. The teacher began to describe something unbelievable. The trees were moving against the wind, branches intertwined like arms. The fire had gone out on its own, and any attempt to rekindle it turned the wood to mud. A black, fetid mud, like rotting flesh. I pressed the dispatch button at the center. I sent 3 teams to the area, but it was far, very far. Meanwhile, the connection grew increasingly strange. Cracking sounds, like bones breaking, children shouting each other's names, and something responding. But it wasn't an echo. It was something else, as if the forest were imitating their voices. One of the boys began speaking in an unknown language. The teacher swore he'd never learned another language. She said he looked up at the sky and repeated the same phrase. He came down from the broken branch." Then she screamed. Something had pulled her out of the children's circle. We heard everything. The call dropped for a few seconds. It came back on, but it wasn't her anymore. Now it was a girl talking to me, 13 years old. She said they were alone, that they saw their teacher being pulled by something made of roots and skin. She was dragged into the woods without making a sound, as if she had fainted on the spot. She said they were surrounded, that the trees formed a ring, that the leaves were turning inside out, revealing symbols burned inside. The children began to sing, not by choice. It was as if they were forced to. The girl was crying. She was asking for help, and in the background, I heard a deep voice, hoarse. It couldn't possibly belong to a child. Catanur, Catanur, Tragos au ciclo. When the drones arrived, they saw the children in a circular formation, sleeping, in sync, as if part of a ritual, in the middle of the dense forest. But there were no adults. When firefighters arrived, they found the 12 students lying around a clearing, all with leaves covering their faces. The leaves were stuck to them like skin. Some firefighters vomited immediately. The teacher was never seen again, nor was her body. They only found her flashlight, with the light still on, inside a hole dug at the base of a tree. The only thing out of place were circular marks around the clearing, like footprints, but very large, much larger than human, and deep, as if something very heavy had walked there. After the rescue, 3 of the children were unable to speak for weeks. One of them ripped off her own fingernail, saying she needed to free the seed. From that day on, no school camped there again. The place was declared uninhabitable, but every now and then, we still get calls from there. Noises, laughter, disjointed calls for help, and always at night. Always at the end of October, whenever the leaves begin to turn. Some people think the worst kind of call-out is a car accident, a school fire, or a gas leak. All of these are horrible, but at least they make sense. What keeps me awake at night are the calls that defy logic, like the one from the house that breathed. It was a Wednesday, late afternoon, and it was starting to rain. We received a call from a frantic woman. She was the neighbor next door. Dona Alzira's house. It's breathing. I know it sounds crazy, but it's breathing. The windows are swelling. The curtains are drooping and swelling as if they had lungs inside. I tried to remain calm. I asked about the smell of gas, smoke, and that's when she said, "There is green smoke coming out of the sockets." I thought it was a chemical leak. I called the team and stayed on the line. She stood at the window. She said she saw figures moving inside, but they weren't people. She said they looked like shapeless shadows, pushing against the walls from within. Suddenly, the line went dead. After a few seconds, she spoke again, but differently, more slowly. She woke up. That voice wasn't the woman's anymore. It sounded like something speaking through her. Once there, the team saw the house. No external damage, but they could feel a heat coming from inside, as if a furnace were working. The windows were fogged up, and when the first firefighter placed his hand on the wall, it throbbed. Pulsu, as if it were skin. We tried to break down the door, but it opened on its own, and the air that came out smelled like burnt lungs. Inside, it was dark, not like there was no light. It was as if the house absorbed the light from the lanterns. The shadows didn't follow the laws of physics. They moved before you. We found Dona Alzira in the bathroom, sitting, dressed in white. Her eyes were completely black. She wasn't blinking. On the mirror in front of her, written in soot, "Breathe for me." We tried to get her out of there, but she started mumbling. Something guttural, rhythmic, like an inverted prayer. And then the house groaned. Not creaked, groaned, as if in pain or pleasure. One of the firefighters fainted. The other freaked out, saying he felt something crawling inside him. We managed to pull Dona Alzira out, but as soon as we left the house and the walls retracted, as if the house were swallowing the air, the smoke stopped. The house fell silent. Dona Alzira survived, but she never spoke again. She sat, staring straight ahead, murmuring softly. I breathed for her. Now it's my turn to wait. They performed a technical inspection. They found nothing. No gas, no substance, no explanation. But there was one thing that no one explained. In the recording of the call, in the last seconds, you can hear heavy breathing. Not from the neighbor, not from Dona Alzira, and not from any of the firefighters. Someone or something was breathing along with the house. These were just 3 of dozens of calls that defy explanation, stories recorded, documented, and that continue to haunt those who answered each one. If you want to understand more about these cases and access even more disturbing accounts with details that couldn't be aired, check out the free ebook we left in the comments. But a warning, some things that are there didn't even appear in the official reports, and once you read it, there's no way to unread it. Good luck, and be careful with calls after midnight. It's not always people wanting help.